Good morning, friends and members of the UUFLB, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Laguna Beach. My name is Don West Jr., and I'm going to be your worship associate for this morning. Our fellowship is served by the Reverend Lee Marie Sanchez. She's with us this morning. I don't know if she wants to say a couple of words. It's a special day. So she's with us this morning. In Unitarian Universalism, we accept you for who and what you are. We are a welcoming congregation with fellowship open to all. We're located in Laguna Beach, California. It's social distancing, so we're having all of our services via Zoom at this time. It's November 8th. It's election weekend. It was an election Tuesday that went all the way through Saturday. So it's our election weekend. So I welcome everyone. We're going to have a conversation a little bit later discussing what next and where we go from here. We subscribe to no single religious creed, but we have gathered a set of principles that guide us as we build a religious community together. Those 7 principles are available on our website, and I invite you to check it out at uulagunabeach.org. Everywhere that Unitarian Universalists gather, a chalice is lit. I'm going to light our chalice for us this morning. And our chalice lighting words come from Gwendolyn Brooks. Gwendolyn Brooks was a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. She was an American poet, author, and teacher. She won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1950. And she wrote these words for us, and I share them with you. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. Next, we're going to have our centering thought for our service today, and it'll be coming up on the screen momentarily. And our centering thought, I pulled from the book of Corinthians because I just love this passage. We're going to leave everyone muted, but you're free to read it with me at home aloud while I read it. And here we go. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Our opening hymn this morning is going to be sung by our musical director, the talented Carole. It's hymn number 1015. I'm sorry, that is not correct at all. It is hymn number 123. I'm sorry, hymn number 123, Carole.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Love in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuentes of amor, ven hacia mí. corazón contemple tu compasión. Solo volar su amor hasta moldear majestia de la vida. Fuerte de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
That was excellent. Thank you so very much, Carole. And now I invite you, if it feels right for you, to join us in reading our unison affirmation. The words are going to appear on the screen. You're invited to unmute yourselves and we can have a joyous chorus. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity.
May we know
once again that we are
We are
not isolated beings,
but
but
connected
connected mystery
and
miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. And now we're going to have a portion of the service where we are going to share our joys and sorrows. We're going to stop the recording to allow for that to take place. And we jumped out of order in our order of service, and I skipped over our reading and jumped right into the joys and sorrows. So I'm going to take one step back in the order of service, and we're going to have our reading. Usually we do a responsive reading when we're in the church, but I'm going to take the reins and read the whole thing for you today to keep the service moving along. It's a short reading today, and the reading comes from Edward Everett Hale, and in the spirit of Pam Flodma, Professor Pam Flodma. I looked up Everett Hale to see what he was all about. He was an author, historian, and Unitarian minister, and just to put his words into a little bit of context, he lived between 1822 and 1909. So these have a little bit of dust on them, a little bit of age, but I still think they're quite fitting. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something I can do. Those words are over 100 years old and came from one of our elder Unitarian ministers out of the Roxbury community in Boston, Massachusetts. So thank you, Edward Hale. Our congregation, our fellowship is supported by the generous contributions of time, talent, and treasure from our fellowship and friends. On your screen, we're going to have methods to give. If you receive this announcement through email or on Facebook, at the bottom of the message, the links are also there as well. And on the right of your screen is the US postal address, if you choose to do it the old-fashioned way, as so many people in the state of Pennsylvania chose to render their votes. You can also send us an offering that way. Your contributions allow us to continue the work of our fellowship, to allow our community to continue. And we're dependent and only survive by and through your generous offerings. So please give generously. next, we're going to move into our meditation. And following our meditation, we're going to have a few words about what's going on in the world today. Carole is going to play us out of our meditation. And then after I give you a few thoughts on the election and what's going on, we're going to have a conversation and allow everyone to join in and share their thoughts and expressions about what's next. So I invite you to center yourself in your seat, find a very comfortable position, close your eyes if you will, and I invite you to find a very specific action or outcome that you'd like to see as we move forward in this time, and put a positive affirmation on that action or outcome, and take a deep breath in and out, and repeat that for a few moments as we focus on what we'd like to see: a more positive, a more kind, a more loving world. I was joking with Pam this morning and yesterday as we prepared for this service that I really didn't know exactly what I was going to say today. When they asked that I do the November 8th service a few weeks ago, I thought it would be easy peasy. We'll have the election results on Wednesday night. I'll have the rest of the week to think about the things that I want to say and reflect on what has happened. But it's 2020, and the year that brought you the 4 months of April also brought you the 1 week of Tuesday. And we really didn't get the election results fully declared until yesterday afternoon. So between Tuesday evening, when the results started to tally, and yesterday afternoon, I kept watching the news like many of you did. And I watched, and I looked at the maps, and I watched, and I looked at the maps, and I watched. And the map was constantly red and blue. And I was wondering, what did that really mean? And a lot of people are extremely excited. A lot of people are extremely disappointed in the election results. And there's a lot of conversation about the red and the blue. And I was having a text conversation with a Marine friend of mine. And we were talking about what would happen if enemy invaders hit Dana Point. And if enemy invaders hit Dana Point tomorrow morning, our entire nation would immediately turn purple. And everyone would rush to the defense of the homeland. And it would be a very purple and united thing. And we were talking in a military context of why is it that our society will come together under threat, but in this time of peace, when we have an opportunity, there's not the same rush for understanding and cooperation. And so that's some of the things that I was thinking about throughout the week as the election results were coming in. And then I was looking for the words to include for the readings. And I thought about the words of Gwendolyn Brooks that we just read. And she said, we are each other's harvest, and we are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. And in that, we are all neighbors. I was asked earlier in the week to prepare a short article on the election results that hadn't come out. And in that article, I remarked that I have lots of red friends, as they call them, and I have lots of blue friends. And I engaged in a little social experiment that was suggested to me while I was on Facebook. And it was actually a Facebook experiment. And Pam, if you could go to the slides that have President Trump's Facebook page. And the experiment suggested, and this was weeks ago during the election, this experiment suggested that you go to President Trump's Facebook page and to Vice President Biden's Facebook page. And if you look right down on the left side there, it says that President Trump has almost 32 million people that like his page, and 95 of those people are my friends on Facebook. And the social experiment was to see how many of your friends liked each of the candidates. And then if you advance to the next slide, I went to Joe Biden's page, and it said that Joe Biden has almost 5.75 million followers, and 73 of my Facebook friends are followers of the Joe Biden page. And for me, that was interesting because lots of other people in my Facebook feed that has almost 1,700 people in my Facebook feed, a lot of them did that same experiment. And what I observed in their results is that a lot of them lived in what I'm calling an echo chamber. They had like 3 friends that liked one side and 100 friends that liked another. And I also observed that people were quite proud of their echo chamber and that they only were associating with one type of person. And for me, in my own personal journey and my own thought process, I thought that was very limiting. And I haven't watched the news very much since the 2016 election, but leading up to the 2016 election, my own personal choice and my own personal approach was that I would watch an hour of CNN and I would watch an hour of Fox. And that practice for myself came about from when I was a first-year law student. I read my first law school case, and I read the first half of the case, and I was convinced that I knew everything that happened, and I knew exactly what was right, and I knew exactly how it should turn out. And then I read the second half of the case, and I saw that there was a whole lot of other stuff that was not in the first half of the case. And when I read both sides, I saw a different picture. And so that's what I thought about a lot this week as I looked at the red and the blue map, and I looked at what I'm observing socially, and at least my social media circles, is that a lot of people are reinforcing their own views and creating an echo chamber and not fully engaging with whoever the other side is from their position and their starting point. And it's creating the red and the blue map. And Pam, there's a graphic of the United States, and it's actually a GIF, and it shows how our country actually reflects as a map, but it also demonstrates that land masses do not vote, and then the map reduces and shows you how we actually populate in the country. If you could share that with everyone, that would be excellent. And so when you look at this, you can see that we're a country of states and counties and cities, but we're actually a country that's made up of people. And you can leave that there. That's perfect. And so my personal desire and what I'm working for in my own personal journey and path is to figure out what it is that I can do, what my personal responsibility and abilities are, because I am only one, but what is it that I can do to create a more united? It would be perfect if that was a purple United States of America to go with the blue and the red, but a true United States of America, and move us closer to the articulation that Barack Obama made in 2004, where he said that he didn't see a red or a blue America, but a United States of America. So those are my personal thoughts on what has occurred up until this point. And I challenge you just to think about what it is that each of us can do personally to create a more welcoming and inclusive conversation, and a conversation that embodies our principles of respect and a democratic process, and our principles of respecting every individual. So those are kind of my thoughts, and I would love to hear what everyone else was thinking about and what everybody else really thinks are some of the proposals for where do we go from here, and what can we do as individuals and as a community, to help live the 7 principles and to help heal our country that is very split. 70 million people voted for the incumbent, and they were highly motivated in their reasons for doing so. So how do we move forward from here, and how do we create that loving community that we all aspire to? So I open that to the floor, and love to hear some thoughts, comments, and suggestions on that point. Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. I try my best to keep to like you say, stay out of the echo chamber, and I have a lot of different variety of friends that did vote for Trump. I know one person I know believes that around 3 a.m. on Wednesday, the deep state injected 120,000 votes for Biden into I think it was Missouri or one of the ones that flipped that night, and she is not believing that there's any there's any chance of a fair election. And she lives in a totally different world than I do. And I try to reach out to her and try to say, well, yeah, definitely, if there's voter fraud, if someone did that, then they need to go to jail, and we need to investigate that until everyone's as sure as they can be. But then I have other people that are that in my Facebook feed that are kind of single issue voters that they're pro-life and they believe that abortion is wrong, and they will vote for anyone that also believes that, regardless of anything else that they do. And it's difficult to work and to get into the same headspace and to try to experience their life. Try to because I feel like it is that echo chamber that causes this sort of thing. At least that's our best chance, in my opinion, of getting out of it, is just to be friends and to kind of help them, see me as a person and not as an enemy. And then maybe, I don't know, but maybe we can at least compromise, and maybe we can at least have something move forward. It is a very challenging space, but there have been some advantage, some points, rays of hope. I know that I have a cousin that's by marriage who is an evangelical Christian, and he and I have a lot of really good discussions, and we respect each other. And I don't know, I think that he just didn't vote this season rather than voting for Biden or anything. But I think that it's possible, and that's my input.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And on your point, in the chat, I'll direct everybody to the chat. Tom shared a link that Reverend Lee Marie has shared that gives some advice and tactics for talking with a Trump voter. And Tom says that he found that very helpful. So I want to make sure everybody sees that link in the chat. And I just want to take a moment to say hello and welcome my friend Tracy from Oregon. Tracy Williams popped in from up in Oregon. Welcome to the UUFLB, Tracy. All those people waving their hands to talk. Look at that. This is exciting.
Thank you for the invite, and I'm enjoying the service very much. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. So who else has some reflective thoughts on where we are, what's possible from here, and what has occurred? What do you got, Carolyn? You're muted. There you go.
Okay. I come from a family of Republicans, and a couple of weeks ago, my niece was visiting, and I asked her, I said, Carole, why are you a Republican? And she told me, well, you know, I've worked really hard, and I don't feel that people who haven't worked as hard as I have should get something for nothing. And I think my whole family feels that way. You know, they're business people, they're hard workers, and they just don't believe that other people deserve something for nothing. And you know, I didn't try to explain to her how, because of their race and their opportunities, how they have had so much more than so many other people in our society. And you know, it was I think she appreciated the fact that I was interested enough to know why she voted the way she did.
That's very important. You know, as Patrick pointed out, the conversation with his cousin by marriage and the conversation, even having the conversation, because there's a lot of people that are having no conversations at this point. So having the conversations and asking that question, I think, is an important first step. Why are you believing, and why are you advocating the way that you are? I think that's an important first step. Thank you, Carole. What do you have for us, Tom?
Oh, thank you. I got so interested in what Carolyn was saying, I forgot what I was going to say. I know we're talking kind of about reconciliation, kind of with the other half of the country, but we're still not done. On January 5th, George is going to elect 2 senators to the Senate, and if those 2 senators are Democratic, then we will just barely control the Senate. So for me, my focus is helping to do what I can to get the Democrats to elect those 2 senators. I still want to talk nicely to Trump people, but I also want to have the Senate so that we can pass laws, maybe beef up the ACA, which could be really hard with Mitch McConnell in charge. So for me, the focus is the Senate on January 5th, even though I can't vote, but I could help out, send money, things like that.
That's an excellent point for individual direct action. You know, I know that going into the general election, a number of people and people like Glenna Williams in and out of our congregation were involved in letter writing campaigns across the country, donated extensively to races across the country. And as Tom points out, there still are a couple of active runoff races in other places aside from Georgia, but specifically in Georgia, as it directly is going to impact the control of the U.S. Senate. What do you got there, Reverend Lee Marie? I've been waiting for you to raise your hand.
Oh, you're muted.
There you go.
All right. Okay. Well, I have to say, as your reverend who is having a very difficult time imagining myself talking to someone whose morals are so out of whack compared to mine, and that's the truth. I'm going to be honest about it. I've attended with ministers and with rabbis and imams and a number of other clerics, some roundtables about how we might do that. And we were all stymied at the end, other than the listening and the trying to be respectful of someone else's opinion. Where do we go next? Education, but people have to want to learn and want to participate, and that's also difficult. So as Tom is doing, I am going to do everything in my power to see that those 2 people, Ossoff and Warnock, Reverend Warnock, the pro-choice Baptist minister, are elected to the Senate. And if anybody's interested, I can send you the information about how to get involved in another postcard writing campaign. It's a little bit more work because you actually have to write a postcard and they have to approve it for them to allow you to get the addresses to make to write the cards. So that's what I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, it is a bit challenging as to how do you approach the other side, in that people have been writing and articulating these issues of morality for a very long time. And in January, Reverend Lee Marie and I are organizing a book group, and we're going to read a book that explores some of James Baldwin's writings. And I actually started reading the book this week in part in preparation for today. But it was very interesting that the proposition is that Baldwin wrote about these exact issues in the 60s, articulated them in our summer movie program. We watched him debate William Buckley at Cambridge. I think it was at Cambridge over in England. And so these issues have been on the table and fully articulated and fully hashed out and fully discussed for generations now. And we don't seem to be making any movement on the ideological position. And that is a question that stymies me as to where do you go when there's been generations of conversation and even perhaps generations of listening. And now where do you go when, and we clearly have entrenched into it was a highly motivated election. It was a record-breaking election on both sides, I believe, in voter turnout. So the other side was not complacent or reticent or tired in their position and their viewpoint. And so that viewpoint is healthy and very much alive. And that is the world that we find ourselves in today. And it is quite a challenge. It is quite a challenge, especially being in Orange County, one of the red refuges of the country. I look at myself, in part, I was at the 3 restaurant on PCH. I feel like I'm an ambassador behind enemy lines in some ways, as I stand out and am easy to identify. And I was able to have multiple conversations with other patrons at the restaurant. And I thought of it, my mother-in-law and father-in-law are from Iran. They came here from Tehran in the 80s. And they said that they were the ambassadors of the Persian culture to everyone they met. That was their attitude, that they represented Iran and Persia to anyone they met at a grocery store, at a restaurant. And I was thinking about that as I was having a conversation with a Navy veteran on the patio of the 3 restaurant. I'm an ambassador of people that look like me. I'm an ambassador of people that think like me. And it was the middle of this past week, in the middle of the uncertainty of the election. And everything that I did reflects ultimately upon everyone that I associate with, this fellowship, my family, so on and so forth. So I just put that out there into the consciousness for a thought and a consideration, and look for someone else to take the mic from me so I can shut up. Does anybody else? There you go, Morgan. Talk, Miss Morgan.
Okay, hi everyone. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, so what struck me, everybody's points, I mean, I'm really on board with what everybody is saying as well. What has struck me post-election was, I mean, it's not just post-election, it's just this whole process of change and transformation and purification that we're going through, which is, you know, just bringing up so much deep stuff, is just, yes, how we treat each other. And one of the big things that I think there's just so much permission in specifically the political sphere is to name call and to just really not filter or work with our own stuff that's being triggered, even when stuff is really off, that people are doing or saying. It's just that level of meanness that I see has just, I mean, this is a big part of the whole thing in our foundation is cruelty and injustice. But, you know, just really lifting our standards. And that's I believe that that's really individual work, but it's also spiritual work. It's speaking from our hearts. It's staying in our hearts and recognizing that, you know, we could destroy ourselves and each other if we don't hold on to that foundation of love and decency. And while at the same time taking really strong stands, because we are dealing with a very, you know, toxic and dangerous underbelly in our culture, in our country. So that's really the big thing that I'm really struck with this week, because I've seen conversations, I found myself in conversations on social media where, you know, people might have opposing views. I do tend to really know more people that are kind of in my same realm of belief system and values and perspective. But at the same time, I don't really think I have a right to attack people personally and call them names. And I just don't see any value in finding any solutions or even getting our own point across in that. So that's a big piece. But at the same time, really firmly and fiercely standing up for truth and change.
I see you, Carole and Candy, and I think Rachel had her hand up as well.
Thanks. I'll be really quick. I apologize if this was already said because I lost internet. So and then came back. But just a few comments that, as Morgan was saying, it is a time, you know, for calm and love, and we need to, in Georgia, think about not just legislation, but also the appointees to the departments that need to go through the Senate. And so that's a big deal. And I 100% that we have to focus there. And then this whole thing about, you know, let's unite now and get, you know, bring ourselves together. Yes, but, and I won't cuss, but that guy, I mean, we need legal action against the atrocities he's committed. I mean, you know, I mean, yes, we have to unite. Yes, we have to all come together, but F him. I mean, you know, there's got to be a price to pay. And whether it's, you know, right now as Biden comes on or when it happens, but it needs to happen. So that's my love everyone and unite and everything's great. And yes, go Biden. Okay.
I love it. Carolyn, what do you got for us?
Well, the thing is that I was thinking about it, and there are Republicans and there are Democrats and then there are Trumpites. And I have always respected Republicans in the past. And as I sometimes tell my friends, well, I even voted for Ronald Reagan. But I just don't think that there is any way of getting through to the Trumpites. They are who they are, and I'd like to hear someone else's opinion on it.
Candy, I don't know if you have a direct response to that, but I know you had your hand up.
I did, and it's not a direct response, but like as Morgan was saying, and it alludes to some of what Carolyn is saying, I think in the past 4 years, one thing we really have experienced is that people listen and they model, and the tone and the tenor, the hope that I have is that the tone and the tenor has changed with this new election and this new person who is speaking in a completely different way. And that I have the hope that there really is going to be a better bridge to be able to cross and have listening type conversations, a little more opening. Maybe that's delusional, I don't know, because of the extremity of the rift that's happened, but I do believe that we found out that it matters. And I'm very hopeful, and that's part of the lifting that I've been feeling, is that there's way more possibility for that bridge to be built, and that we will feel more of our connectedness with a better tone and tenor.
Peggy, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Don. Well, here's some of the thoughts that I've had this week, because it's such a huge dilemma. We've all been thinking about it for years and years and years. One thought that's occurred to me is that those of us who are on the other side of things might not be the best ambassadors ourselves to reaching, especially the most extreme people who are supporters of Trump, who would just about die for him. I mean, that's just coming from such, I think, you know, we have to be careful about not generalizing and painting everybody with the same, you know, paintbrush, but because there are a lot of different people who support Trump for different reasons, but it might take Republicans to reach them. And I think that one of the biggest problems that we've had is that I do think a lot of people on the other side of us get most of their news from one source. They get it from Fox News, and they don't get a lot of other input. And I have a sibling who was a cult member for a long, long time. She's still affiliated, but she has her own life and freedom now, and I'm grateful for that. But you know, if you've read anything about cult life, one of the first things they do is shut off your sources of information. So my sister was a Scientologist in her 20s, and we realized pretty quickly she had lots of things to talk about, but every single thing she talked about, everything she had to believe, believed and shared with us, all came from one source. Nothing came from outside of Scientology. And it is very hard to communicate with people who come from an emotional place, get all their information from one source and believe it. It's very hard to challenge them. So on the lighter side, the more positive side, I have thought this week that Joe Biden, many people think he is the right person to lead right now because he is a more flexible personality. He's got this great record of bipartisan communication and support. He's tomorrow he's appointing his COVID committee, and I think maybe the very next committee ought to be a bipartisan healing committee. I think that it would be great for him to find the right Republican partner for himself to lead this effort, to go out and to reach across the divides with the map Don showed us earlier, you know, that this is going to be a priority in this administration for the next 4 years. In addition to our wanting to win those Senate seats in Georgia and all the other things a lot of us would still like to see happen, that a priority for the next 4 years is for the country with the right leadership to do this kind of healing. And this means that there are bipartisan healing committees going on all over the country. It's a little bit like what South Africa did after apartheid, and that we really need that expansive view of healing, because we don't want to be in this place again in another 4 years and another election. And we won't reach everybody. There are people who are just too far out there and don't want to come back. But I'll bet there are a lot of other people we can reach, but it's not going to come just from Democrats. That's for darn sure, because they are really tuned out to us. So my vote is for Biden to lead us towards these with his own Republican partners, to reach out and create bipartisan healing committees across the country where the focus is on we're Americans, and we're not blue and we're not red, but we're Americans.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, everybody.
I see Teresa and Noreen and Patrick have their hands up, and Peggy she touched on something about the source of news, and we're in a very unique place in our timeline historically, in that the source of news, when I was a little kid, there was knobs on the television and there was only a few channels. And I was speaking with my father, and he said not only were there only a few channels, but the TV went off at midnight and they played the national anthem and went, for hours. But that doesn't happen. That's why I didn't sleep very much this week, because there was TV on all night long and I kept watching But I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and he referenced a news source that isn't a news source. He referenced something called QAnon. And he was telling me all these things that QAnon was saying. And when I say we're in a unique place in our timeline, he actually doesn't think that the election is over. He thinks that there's all these secret things that are about to happen. And this was yesterday at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was because of his source of information. And there's a lot of people around the world, because I'm in contact with people in other countries, and they're listening to QAnon too. And I don't know what he's saying right now, but I know he's saying a lot and people are listening. And he's not saying things like President-elect Biden. That's not what he's saying. So it's very interesting where we are and what people are listening to and what people are believing.
And there's a Newsmax is another one.
And there's a whole nother online set of, because they're not cable news channels, but they're news outlets that people are listening to. And I've heard it said that it's hard to talk to somebody when you're not talking from the same source and you don't even know what their source is. It's a very interesting point in the timeline. And I'm sorry for that little divergence, but Teresa, you were next. You have to unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. So couple of thoughts. I really, when Rachel was speaking about, kind of the consequences of some of this activity that we've been suffering from for the past 4 years, I really jumped on that bandwagon. And then I kind of thought to myself, okay, you got the Southern District of New York, you've got the IRS, Deutsche Bank starting to call loans. I think that he will be well taken care of in terms of being held accountable. I'm going to let that go because I think you're seeing the rats leaving the ship. You look at Fox News, they called Arizona, right, before every other news outlet. And he was so absolutely infuriated by this. But my husband was telling me that Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News, apparently told them before the election was even called, okay, get off the ship with Trump. They're dumping him. So I, like Don, will listen to some Fox News, even though I need a vomit bucket beside myself, but I can't listen to them to try and understand where they're coming from, because otherwise sometimes I listen to CNN and Fox and I think they're both as bad as each other. I'm trying to get something that's sort of in the middle, that's less partisan and name calling. But I also feel that with Fox pulling away from this sort of almost like state-sponsored TV news, I'm just praying and begging that we will get a different kind of more objective response to what's going on. So that's one thing. The other piece, I really agree with what I think Peggy mentioned this about Republicans speaking to Trumpsters, because I think Patrick talked about the single issue voters, and I've met a few of those that are maybe anti-abortion, or they want to keep their taxes down, or they don't like immigrants, those terrible immigrants coming into this country. But apart from that, I think that Republicans and Democrats can work fine together on both sides of the aisle. Once you drown out the noises of the extremists, like the Tea Party, the Trumpers, that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. By the same token, and people will not agree with me on this one necessarily, but some of the squad in the Democratic Party, AOC and those folks, terrific young progressives, but this is a nation of more centrists. And so when you start talking about defund the police and people think, oh my God, we're going to be at the mercy of the mob, or you talk about, what were some of the other things that they mentioned? Some things that people are not ready for yet. Like, this country is not ready for a woman president. This country is not ready for a First Nation president, in my opinion. I think we've got a lot of work to go before we get to a place where we can accept anybody other than a white male running the shop. But so as a comment, I believe that Republicans are going to be better allies at helping folks that are healing from Trumpism, which in my opinion is a cult. I think Trump's going to be held accountable more than we will ever know, because he has sought just scorched earth policies, and there will be accountability for his actions. From my perspective, I'm very worried about the 6 weeks that he's got left to enact various executive orders or things that could really be sort of spiteful and mean, vengeful, because I believe that's his character. I hope it isn't, but I believe it is. And other than that, I lost my train of thought, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Teresa. And Noreen, you had your hand up. We're going to go to Patrick. Cindy has her hand up there. I believe that's a hand up. and then we're going to close it out after Cindy. So Noreen, you have the mic.
Thank you. And I appreciate the comments this morning profoundly. In a split household, it's a difficult issue. And one of the causes, I think, so much is just the difference in world outlook. We have people who were raised with empathy, the emphasis on empathy and interest in other people, and those with that Protestant ethic of work hard, sort of like Carolyn's people. So, you know, it's not just Democrat and Republican, there's this cultural things too, and it's kind of hard to think about how to deal with that. Patience and kindness, but also we need to not allow the platforms that we have where people can over and over again spew the lies that then the others agree with and believe is truth. Everybody said that, and I appreciate that. But anyway, I'm happy it's a new day. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of address the question of Trump supporters, and some people are just too far gone to talk to. And I want to say, no, not for me. I mean, like, I believe in the infinite redeemability of humans. That's one of my core beliefs. I mean, that I've come to for myself, is that there's three of them: that I don't believe in a God, I don't believe in the afterlife, although I wouldn't be proven wrong about that, and I believe that anyone can be good if they want to be. That's something that is just inherent in the way that our brains work, that we're not bound by our biological disposition or our upbringing, that we can always grow and change and become, you know, a person that is good, and that goodness is everywhere. That goodness is in that person that's screaming on the side of the road with the big Trump flag saying, you know, I hate immigrants, I hate everyone, and I just want to have the tweeter in chief back in power. But that's not for me. You know, I want to go to that person, I want to talk to them, and I want to believe that they can change.
Well, I co-sign with you on that. People can change for sure, Patrick. One of the greatest men that I know spent 27 years in jail for murder, and he does some of the most amazing things, and is one of the kindest people that I've encountered. And you would never know if he didn't share with you that he had spent 27 years in jail for murder. So that is a point. People can change their outlook, but they have to be willing to. It's an inside job. I see you there. Cindy, you had your hand up, and then I'm going to come over to you, Lady President, even though we're not ready for one yet.
I think that there's basically two kinds of Republicans, the traditional ones and the maggots. And I think now the regular Republicans are finally going to have a chance to take their party back. You know, going back to the Republicans like Mitt Romney, John McCain. You know, I don't like them, but at least they have something between their ears other than air. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years.
I'll share that my family has been Republican since the Emancipation Proclamation, when my great-great-great-great-grandfather Abram Lee was freed from slavery. As a result of that, my family has been Republican and worked for the Republican Party up until Barack Obama was the first time my great-great-aunt ever voted for a Democrat in her life. And I personally was registered as a Republican and could no longer affiliate with the party after 2015. So it's just interesting because there are people who have what we call conservative viewpoints in life, but they are in no way, in any shape, form, or fashion affiliated with what is known as Trump. Peggy, and then Jonathan, and then we're going to kick it over to the lovely Carole to take us home, because it's almost time for
Jonathan,
lunch.
go first. Let anyone who hasn't spoken yet go before me, please.
Jonathan, you have the floor, sir.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, my friend.
Phone had a mistake for the second time of tuning in at 11:45 that we're used to doing on Friday. I am just totally relieved, number one, that that we got rid of this guy. I know how an oppressed people feel after they get rid of a bad dictator. Secondly, I'm just really relieved that we aren't having a lot of riots. I was really worried about that. because Trump was inciting some pretty bad people. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I thank everyone for tuning in today, since we're on Zoom, and thank everyone who shared their thoughts. We definitely are in a very unique place in time. There's much more work to do. And with that, we are going to have one of my favorite songs that I've encountered since walking in the front doors of the UUFLB, hymn number 1064 and our teal hymnals from the lovely Carole, Blue Boat Home. Take it away, Carole.
Nice, nice, nice.
Below me, I feel no ocean, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still, my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now. Never harbored or port have I known. My universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. Sun my sail and moon my rounder, as I fly the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep. Drifting here, my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat. I give thanks to the waves of calling me, hail the great wind surging beyond. With the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbored nor port have I known. My universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue
Thank you so much, Carole. That was absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite songs. As we prepare to extinguish our chalice this afternoon, I want to remind you and bring everybody's attention to something that came to us this summer through AJ Ali. He spoke about love being the answer, and he had an acronym for love, and the L was learn, the O was open your heart, the V was volunteer yourself, and the E was empower others. And that really stuck with me. I've attempted to incorporate it into my own personal journey. So I invite everyone, open your heart, find a way to deal with those who clearly have opposing views and positions to ourselves. And as we extinguish our chalice, And until we come back together again, I want to bid everyone a wonderful, wonderful week of making good trouble and being proactive in the world that we live in, because it is what it is, and it's up to us to make it better. And with that, again, we get the lovely Carole and one of my favorite songs in the entire world, our closing song for the day. We're going to mute everyone and allow Carole to take us home. So Carole, take it away.
Thank you, John. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With earth as our mother, we are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment then. With every step I take, let this be my